You glance at your phone, and it tells you the time down to the minute. A clock on the wall, a watch on your wrist, a number in the corner of every screen. You have probably never once in your life not known what time it is. Now take all of it away. No phone, no clock, no watch. You wake in the dark, and you have no idea if it's midnight or almost morning. So here's the question. How would you know what time it is? Because for almost the entire human story, nobody had a clock. And the way our ancestors answered that question reveals something strange. The thing you call an hour, that neat, fixed 60-minute block, is a surprisingly recent invention. And for thousands of years, it didn't even stay the same length. Let's start at the beginning, with the very first clock anyone ever had, the sky. The sun comes up, climbs to its highest point, slides back down, and disappears. Light, then dark, then light again. That cycle is the oldest unit of time there is, the day. And you don't need any tools to read it. For most of human history, people simply lived by it. You woke when it got light, you worked while the sun was up, you slept when it went dark. Time wasn't a number, it was the position of the sun in the feeling in your body. Hunger, tiredness, the cool of evening. But the sun does more than just rise and set. Watch it across a year and it drifts. It rises in slightly different places, climbs higher in summer, lower in winter. The nights stretch and shrink. And our ancestors noticed. They started watching the sky not just for the day, but for the year. Because if you can predict the seasons, you can predict when the cold comes, when the animals migrate, when to plant. The other great clock in the sky helped too. The moon, swelling from nothing to full and back again over about 29.5 days, handing humans their first calendar unit longer than a day, the month. Some of the oldest marks humans ever left may be attempts to count it. There is a small carved bone called the Lobombo bone found in a cave on the border of South Africa and Eswatini, around 40,000 years old, with 29 notches cut into it. 29, almost exactly the number of days in a lunar cycle. Some researchers think it was a way of tallying the moon, though we can't be certain it wasn't just counting something else. Either way, the urge to track time in scratches is astonishingly old. And then people started building. In a field at Warren Field in Scotland sits a row of 12 pits dug by hunter-gatherers around 8,000 years before Christ. In 2013, a team of archaeologists led by Vince Gaffney argued that those 12 pits were a kind of calendar, that they mapped the cycles of the moon across the year, and that the whole arc pointed toward the sunrise on the midwinter solstice, so it could be reset against the sun once a year. If they're right, it would be the oldest known time reckoner of its kind, thousands of years older than the first calendars of the Middle East. It's an interpretation, not a settled fact, but the pits are real, and they're that old. Bigger monuments did the same job in stone. Stonehenge, raised on Salisbury Plain around 2,500 years before Christ, is lined up on a solstice axis. Look out along its avenue, and the line points to sunrise on the longest day of the year, and in the opposite direction to sunset on the shortest. Older still is Newgrange in Ireland, built around 3200 BCE, centuries before the Great Pyramid. Above its doorway, its builders left a small opening called a roof box, and for a few mornings around the winter solstice, and only then, a thin blade of sunrise slips through that box and crawls all the way down a long stone passage to light up the chamber deep inside. A building designed to catch a single sunrise a year. That's a clock made of architecture. But these tracked the year. What about the day itself, the hours? For that, humans turn to shadows. Push a stick into the ground and its shadow swings across the day, long at dawn, short at noon, long again at dusk. That's a sundial in its crudest form, and the ancient Egyptians turned it into a system. They split the daylight into 12 parts and the night into 12 more. 12 plus 12. That's where your 24-hour day comes from. The oldest surviving Egyptian shadow clock we have, a little carved piece of limestone, dates to around 1500 years before Christ. And here's the strange part, the thing almost nobody realizes. Those 12 daytime hours were always 12, no matter the season. But a summer day is much longer than a winter day. So if you always chop the daylight into 12 pieces, then in summer each piece is long, and in winter each piece is short. The hour literally stretched and shrank with the seasons. A daytime hour in June was not the same length as a daytime hour in December, and daytime hours were almost never the same length as nighttime hours. For most of recorded history, this is what an hour was. Not a fixed unit, but a flexible slice of however much daylight there happened to be. The rigid, identical hour on your phone would have made no sense to most people who ever lived. Sundials spread across the ancient world, though not always smoothly. The Roman writer Pliny tells us that the first public sundial in Rome wasn't even built for Rome. It was war booty, captured from a Sicilian city in 263 BCE and hauled back and set up on a column. The problem is that a sundial has to be calibrated for the latitude it sits at, and this one was made for Sicily, hundreds of miles south. So, for about a century, Romans were reading the time off a dial that was simply wrong, and apparently nobody fixed it. People grumbled, too. One Roman comedy has a starving character cursing whoever invented the hours and the sundial for chopping his day into pieces and telling him when he was allowed to eat. The complaint that the clock rules your life is at least 2,000 years old. But shadow clocks have an obvious flaw. No sun, no shadow. They're useless at night and on a cloudy day. So humans built a clock that didn't need the sky at all. The water clock. The idea is simple. Let water drip out of a vessel at a steady rate and mark the falling level against the hours. The oldest one we have physical proof of comes from the temple of Karnak in Egypt, made during the reign of the pharaoh Amenhotep III, around 1350 BCE. It's a bowl of alabaster with a small hole near the base, and as the water trickled out, the dropping level revealed the passing hours, marked on the inside. The Greeks gave the water clock a job that hits surprisingly close to home. In the law courts of ancient Athens, a water clock called the clepsydra was used to time the speeches. Each side got a fixed amount of water, measured out according to how serious the case was. And when your water ran out, your time was up. You were, quite literally, running out of time as the water drained away. Later, an engineer named Ctesibius, working in Egypt in the 3rd century BCE, refined the water clock so it dripped at a far steadier rate. And in Athens stood the Tower of the Winds, an 8-sided marble tower with sundials on the outside and a water clock within, fed by a spring, so that it could tell the time even when the sun refused to show. Then there were the stars. The Egyptians watched groups of stars they called decans, 36 of them, that rose one after another over the course of a night. As each new group climbed over the horizon, another hour of darkness had passed. The night sky itself became a clock. They even had a special sighting tool, the merket, which means the instrument of knowing, a plumb line you'd line up against the stars to read the hour after dark. And they were so committed to keeping time that they painted star tables on the inside of coffin lids, so that even the dead could tell the hour in the afterlife. The greatest of their sky clocks ran on a single star. Each year, the bright star Sirius vanished from the sky for about 70 days, then reappeared just before dawn. And that reappearance lined up, almost magically, with the moment the Nile began its life-giving flood. The Egyptians built their whole 365-day calendar around it, although because they never added a leap day, their calendar slowly slid out of step with the seasons, drifting by about a day every 4 years until it wandered all the way around and back again over many centuries. And don't think of these people as primitive. Around 2,000 years ago, some Greek craftsmen built a device we now call the Antikythera mechanism, a box of more than 30 bronze gears recovered from a shipwreck. By turning a handle, it modeled the movement of the sun and moon, predicted eclipses, and tracked cycles of the calendar. It is, in effect, the world's first known analog computer, built to compute the heavens, and we found nothing else like it for well over 1,000 years. Far to the east, in China, an official named Su Song completed an astonishing 40-foot water-powered clock tower in the city of Kaifeng by the end of the 11th century. It used a mechanism to release its motion in regular beats, an early version of the escapement, the very heart of every mechanical clock that would come later. He more or less built a mechanical clock, powered by water, centuries ahead of Europe. People got inventive in smaller ways too. King Alfred the Great of England is said to have measured his day by burning candles, 6 of them, each marked into inches, each burning at a steady pace, so that the whole set lasted 24 hours. In China, people burned incense along marked trails and twisting grooves, reading the time by how far the smoldering ember had crept. And in 1206, the Muslim engineer Al-Jazari described his famous elephant clock, a fantastical water-powered machine built around a hidden bowl that slowly sank in water and triggered the whole thing to chime. So if humans had sundials and water clocks and star tables for thousands of years, why did we finally invent the mechanical clock? The answer isn't really science, it's routine and prayer. Islam organizes the day around 5 prayers, each tied to the position of the sun, from dawn to nightfall, which made knowing the exact time a daily religious duty. And in the monasteries of Christian Europe, life ran on a strict timetable. The Rule of St. Benedict, written around the year 530, divided the day and night into a set of fixed prayer times, the canonical hours, and the monks were called to each one by the ringing of a bell. Someone had to know when to ring that bell, in the dark, in the cold, in every season. And that relentless need to sound the hours automatically and on time is what drove European craftsmen around the year 1300 to build the first weight-driven mechanical clocks. And that machine quietly changed everything. A mechanical clock can only do one thing: tick out equal, identical beats. It cannot stretch its hour in summer or shrink it in winter the way the sun does. So the old, breathing, seasonal hour, the one that had ruled human life for thousands of years, simply died. The equal hour won, because that's the only kind a machine could keep. Time stopped being something you read off the sky and became something a machine handed to you, the same length, every hour, forever. So think about what really happened. For almost all of human history, time lived in the world around you. It was the sun warming your face, the shadow sliding across the dirt, the moon filling and emptying, the stars wheeling overhead, a single star rising to announce a flood. You looked up or you looked down at a shadow, and the universe told you the hour. The clock took all of that, lifted it off the sky, and pinned it to a dial. Then it shrank that dial onto your wrist, and finally into your pocket. We didn't just learn to measure time more precisely, we handed it over to a machine. Once, you told the time by reading the world. Now the time tells you. And the sun, that first and oldest clock, still rises exactly the way it did for every human who ever had nothing to read it by but the sky.